If you've left a trade in the comment section over the past week, it's probably in this video. Starting off with, what do we do with Trey McBride? I have Laporta, Kincaid, McBride. I was offered the 110 for him. Now, obviously, if you find yourself sitting in a situation where you have these three tight ends, three of the top 5 tight ends in Dynasty, you are sitting pretty, you are extremely happy, and you don't really need to have Trey McBride. So I understand, and I would probably agree that it does make sense to go out there and look to sell. Now, of course, it comes down to how you personally value him, how you think he stacks up against whatever rookie you're going to be looking at with pick 10. And I'll say for sure, if it's going to be a one quarterback format, we obviously want Trey McBride over the 110, even if you were this loaded at tight end. However, if it's a super flex league where you probably have Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy all gone off the board already. Instead, that's more so like the 106 in a one quarterback format where I do think we have to discuss it. Now on flockfantasy.com, we have the community rankings, which are completely free for anybody. You don't even need an account. You can go check them out whenever you want. And in the community rankings, Trey McBride currently is being valued right behind the 105 and 106 and right before a 2025 early to mid first and the 107. Now, I think this is pretty aggressive. Like if I am looking at McBride versus the 106, 107, give me the rookie pick in a super flex format, just given how much flexibility you're going to get through the offseason. I'm a little bit, and just a little bit concerned that if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes over to the Arizona Cardinals, then all of a sudden the targets may end up coming down for McBride. Now, if you pull up the expert rankings on the site, now this is going to be behind a paywall, but like I said, the community rankings on flockfantasy.com are free for y'all. You see that the experts on the site are currently valuing Trey McBride after the 106, after the 107, after the 108 as well, and directly before the 109 and 110. I would agree with this, and if I'm looking at McBride, I'd prefer him over the 110, regardless of if it was going to be a tight end premium format or not, if it's a super flex pick. Now, if it's a one quarterback pick, go ahead, take Trey McBride. Don't even think twice. I think this is a close enough deal that you can counter. I would just ask for the 110. There's second and third round picks this year. And then honestly, maybe mix in another late pick or a veteran difference maker at the bottom end. But moving over to our next deal, this coming out from Trusses. Would you trade away Addison for a 109, 401, and Javonte? Lots of value, but I think Addison may be that good. Now, if you look at the community rankings, maybe that's going to tell you to go ahead and take the 109 Javonte in the 2024 fourth in the trade calculator. However, I love me some Jordan Addison. I mean, this is a wide receiver that checked pretty much every single box coming out as a prospect. He broke out as a true freshman, dominated as a true sophomore, declared as a true junior, went round 1 of the NFL draft, was a very good rookie at 21 years old, even with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL once Kirk Cousins went down. So, I mean, I love Jordan Addison in Dynasty, and I'm going to be a lot higher on him than most. So if you actually change the trade calculator values from community to my values, I'm going to prefer Addison over the 109 and Javonte. I mean, if you're looking at the 109, even if this is a super flex format, you don't really know who you have. Brian Thomas, maybe there. I mean, maybe you're looking at like Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy. It's all going to come down to the combine and draft capital for that tier of players. But it is an uncertain rookie, right? Not someone who checks every single box like Jordan Addison. And while Javonte Williams still has upside, and Javonte is probably safe just given how weak this running back class is overall, it's not like Javonte's proven enough at the NFL level for us to come out and feel any type of confidence with him. So if you're looking at my values with the trade calculator, I'd prefer them. You can go ahead, put Jordan Addison and Javonte into the trade finder as well. One deal that I do want to point out is going to be the trade where you see Javonte and Jaden Reed get traded for Jordan Addison, Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, and another trade where you see Javonte, Jaden Reed, Greg Dulcich get traded for Jordan Addison, a second and a third. So it is interesting to get a baseline of where people are valuing those guys. And I definitely recommend, if y'all wanted to, use the trade calculator in that way, use the trade finder in that way, where you're just getting a baseline, right? It's not to tell you exactly what to do, but definitely to make sure that we're in the same ballpark and at least close enough. Now, going over to our next trade, it's going to be important when you're on the trade calculator. Make sure you are putting in your exact league settings, because if you have your league settings in as if it's a super flex format, maybe it's going to be taking the 107 over Saquon Barkley. However, if you look at the fact that this is not a super flex league, this is a one quarterback format where that 7th pick is fundamentally a dramatically different player, where we can say in a super flex format, you already got May, Daniels, and Caleb Williams already off the board. So really, you're looking at one of Bowers or Rome at the 107. And in the super flex format, give me Rome or Bowers over Saquon Barkley. However, if it's a 10-team, one quarterback league where the depth doesn't really matter, I just want to go out there and chase the guy with the highest ceiling, I'm going to go ahead. I am going to take Saquon Barkley over the 107 in a one quarterback format, because you're going to have the top 4 skill positional guys off the board. Brian Thomas is probably off the board. You're probably looking at like Adonai Mitchell, right? And of course, I'm not just saying that only him, maybe Keon Coleman. It's going to depend on the combine. It's going to depend on the NFL draft when we get to that tier wide receiver. But nonetheless, you're looking at a wide receiver that by no means is some top level prospect. This isn't someone going top 10, top 15 in the NFL draft. In this format, especially for a contending piece, I think Saquon Barkley does have the elite level ceiling in the short term, especially if he ends up going to a spot like the Houston Texans, and I'd rather roll the dice there. Now, going over to our next trade. So a little bit of a longer one. We traded the 201 and the 303 in a 10-team Superflex league for Javonte. I now have 3 of the first 5 picks alongside with 5 other second-round picks for later. So I really want to narrow in on this. I have seen so many people, not only this offseason, last offseason, the offseason before, this is a very common occurrence, where they accumulate so many rookie picks that they're sitting here with 6 picks in the first round. They're sitting here with 6 picks in the second round. And they have nobody on their team, of course, because they have all picks. And they get a little antsy. They go, okay, yeah, I am going to have more than enough firepower in this rookie draft to do what I want anyway. So that means these picks are expendable. That means I can trade them at a discount. I'll trade the 201, which is like the 111 in a 12-team format. I'll trade essentially a late first and a late second round pick for Javonte Williams. Despite Javonte at this point just being a speculative bet where we don't necessarily know who he is. He's at the tail end of his rookie deal. We know typically running backs that are going on to their second contract in Dynasty see their value plummet. I mean, really the only guys that you can make an exception for are those top end players, right? The Nick Chubbs back in the day. This generation is going to have Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. Javonte Williams is not of that ilk. If you're asking me, would I rather have essentially a late first or Javonte Williams? Give me the late first. I think you can get a comparable player that's just way early on in his cycle and has it in the range of outcomes to turn into a top, say 10 dynasty asset. Like, let's just go through hypothetical situation, right? You go ahead, and I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just going to go random hypothetical. You take Keon Coleman here with this pick. Keon Coleman comes out, and he is a high-end wide receiver 2 as a rookie. Not a league winner by any means, but he flashes. He's high-end wide receiver 2. Where's his dynasty value next offseason? The man's going to be valued inside the top 3 rounds of startup drafts. Whereas, what can Javonte Williams possibly do to get there at this point of his career? He would have to be like a top 3 to 5 running back in fantasy. I don't even know if he's the RB5 from a points per game perspective if he gets there. Do not panic when you have this many picks. When you have this many picks, it is a strength. You have a monopoly on the draft class. You are not the person who needs to go out there and try to sell those. You hold on to them, especially as we've not gone through free agency, especially as we've not had the combine, especially as we have not had the NFL draft. You let all of that play out. And then if you wanted to go buy Javonte for the equivalent of a late first round pick, when he's already dodged free agency, when he's already dodged the NFL draft, then at that point you can. But you're the team with the stable assets. If anybody wants to go through and trade for a rookie pick, they're happy to come to you. Please, for the love of God, don't just start giving away these picks because you have a lot of them. I really hate when we see that. Now, going over to our next deal, this is a big one. And I will say, typically in Dynasty leagues, this is what I used to try to do, right? When I first started playing Dynasty back in like 2014, 2015, I would send out 4-for-4 deals. I would send out 5-for-5 deals. I'd send out 6-for-2 deals. I would send massive packages and massive pieces for other massive pieces. And a lot of times they get rejected because as I've gotten a little bit older, I've started to realize 9 times out of 10, you can't create a win-win situation if you're selling 4 assets for a different 4 assets, right? I mean, a lot of times you can make a win-win dynasty trade if it's a simple deal. If you're approaching a contending team in your rebuilding roster, you're shipping them off Javonte for, the 201 and the 301 in a 10-team league, right? I mean, that's a deal where you can presumably see it potentially helping both rosters if everything plays out. These, it's usually, okay, someone's going to be the clear winner, someone's going to be the clear loser, and I try to participate in trades where I think there can be winners on both sides. That's a little bit of a side tangent, probably annoying you with it. But it's A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Wan'Dale, the 108. And in return, Chase, Eckler, Kittle, Wicks. Now, I would rather have Chase over Brown, but I'd rather have Pickens over Eckler. I'd rather have the 108 over Kittle. Wan'Dale versus Wicks, who really cares? So a lot of times you see these 4-for-4 deals, people will say, okay, I'm getting an upgraded 3 spots, I'm downgrading 1 spot. But if you're downgrading with the top spot, in reality, it's going to end up hurting you more than helping you. And this is a big thing that I like that we've actually been able to account for with our Dynasty trade calculator. I think a big issue that you've seen with a lot of trade calculators in the past is if you have 4 quarters, for whatever reason, it makes it where it's worth more than $1, where that's typically not the situation. You want the most exciting piece. You want the top end stud. And yeah, pull this into the flockfantasy.com trade calculator. Even with the community values here, it is going to prefer the Jamar Chase side, which is personally what I prefer, just because I do view Chase in a completely different tier of what you have with someone like A.J. Brown. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not already using the trade calculator on flockfantasy.com, you can check that out on flockfantasy.com, the trade finder that we have. You can also go through and check out all the community rankings for free, all the expert rankings, all the rankings, not only for myself, but also pretty much everybody else that you watch on YouTube. All the premium content. We have 3 rookie draft guides on the site from some very smart individuals already. But yeah, if you use code FLOCK on flockfantasy.com, you're going to get 30% off any subscription. Plus, with promo code FLOCK, yours truly will break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast, and you'll get a free week trial as well. So make sure you take advantage of that with the link in the comment section and description. But going over to Jack's question, I was a little bit surprised to see this. So it's Jefferson versus the 102 and Jordan Addison. Now, this is a 12-team Superflex Start 11 league, and typically this is the only thing I play in, right? I love 12-team Start 11 Superflex formats where it typically is going to skew it a little bit more towards the importance of having depth rather than just getting the best player. If you're playing in a lot of these formats, if you only start 9 guys, just give me the best player. I don't even want to think about anything else. But here, depth does matter. So if we go ahead and put these league settings into flockfantasy.com, it actually does have the 102 and Jordan Addison side winning. This isn't something that I can say I 100% agree with. I think it is close. I understand the argument. We see people replying to this comment saying easily the 102 and Addison. If the pick ends up being Harrison, you're licking your chops. I like Addison. I obviously like Marvin Harrison. I'm a little bit hesitant to say that it's easily the pick in Addison's side, even in a format where you are incentivized to build a little bit more round depth. Now, going over to our next question, I was offered the 105 for JSN in a 1 quarterback format. Do I take it? Now, I know everybody is going to have JSN here. I will say a couple different things. One, if it is a super flex format, coming from someone who liked JSN a lot as a prospect, and I still like JSN despite him objectively not having a good rookie season. If you can sell Jackson Smith-Njigba for the 105 in a super flex format and you decide not to make that decision, you're making a massive, massive mistake. And a super flex format where that 105 is presumably like Malik Neighbors, please, for the love of God, take the pick. In a 1 quarterback format, I think you can go JSN. Because in a 1 quarterback format, you are going to see, say, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers, Rome. They're presumably all off the board. And instead at pick 5, it's like, okay, do I really want Brian Thomas Jr. here? And if you still like Jackson Smith-Njigba over that range, I'm not going to fault you going ahead and taking him. And I would say, if you ask me today, would I rather have Brian Thomas Jr. or JSN? I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take JSN. Now, there is the little bit of extra value that you get with the 105 and that you have the flexibility. We don't exactly know how the NFL draft's going to go. You may end up getting, say, Brian Thomas Jr. in a great spot like Buffalo, and the team at 4 in front of you does something crazy, and they end up taking him, and we get someone like Rome falling to us. So you do have a little bit of the extra bonus that if you are sitting with pick 5, you have the hidden upside that one of the top 4 guys fall. And at the same time, you have the additional flexibility where we can turn that pick into almost anything we want through the rest of the offseason. So in a 1 quarterback format, I do think it's going to be up to you. I assume that most people are going to prefer Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I do want to reiterate, for the love of God, if you have the opportunity to sell him for the 105 in a super flex league, please do it. Now, going over to our next question, this is something that I honestly probably need to make an entire video about. So y'all know I'm pretty much making team podcast breakdowns all day on flogfantasy.com and essentially looking at teams, trying to come up with what they should do, rookie draft strategy, the whole 9 yards. And one thing that I've seen time and time again is in 10-team superflex leagues, nobody wants quarterback. There are more than enough quarterbacks to go around. If you just do some simple math, I mean, it makes sense. In a 10-team superflex format, you're going to have, on average, every team with 3 to 4 starting QBs. Whereas in a 12-teamer, it's only going to be every team has 2 to 3 starting QBs. So when we get to that format, if you have someone like Baker Mayfield, you just simply can't sell him. Nobody's going to buy him, and nobody needs that quarterback 2 prototype. And because nobody really needs that QB, naturally they are going to be falling down rookie drafts. So if you see me, say, in a 12-team superflex format, say that 100% I'm going to go through, I'm going to take Caleb Williams at pick 1 over Marvin Harrison Jr. Understand that in a 10-team format, given the supply and demand ratio of what you have at the quarterback position, I do think that you are able to go ahead and you are able to pull the trigger on Harrison over Caleb when quarterbacks are easier to come by. Now, this is a reply to the video that we had way back last week regarding possibly selling A.J. Brown. A suggestion that I gave was taking A.J. Brown in a lesser asset and going through and trying to package up to a wide receiver that is younger and should be more productive in the short term. Going through and trying to get to CeeDee Lamb, trying to get to Jamar Chase, trying to get to Justin Jefferson. And that's exactly what this team did. They go ahead and they sell A.J. Brown in the 109 to get back CeeDee Lamb and a late 2024 second round pick. I actually like CeeDee Lamb here. I'd prefer Lamb in the short term. Obviously, Lamb is significantly more long-term value if you look at the age of these 2 receivers. It's interesting. If this was like the 107, I'd definitely say keep the 107. But with this being the 109, I think I'll stand by it. I think we'll go with CeeDee Lamb here. Now, this trade, I just don't understand what people are saying. Just traded Fields and Zay Flowers for Javonte in the 101. Pretty happy with that. The top response is, yikes. 2 big ifs for 2 certainties. Lost that one. Okay. When you're looking at the 101, aka you're looking at Caleb Williams. From a real life perspective, he is a big if, right? Like we see a lot of times quarterbacks come in with the number 1 overall pick and they end up not being as good as advertised. They end up being, that's entirely in the range of outcomes. But just because we have not seen him in the NFL doesn't mean he's a bigger question mark than someone like Justin Fields. Whereas with Justin Fields, we've seen him at the NFL level. He's objectively been a bad quarterback from a real life perspective. Obviously great in fantasy given the rushing upside. And you can make a strong argument that it was just based off his situation in Chicago and why he failed. And maybe with the better situation, he is better. But it's a big maybe. We don't know. It's a big if nonetheless. So what you have to do is you have to look at the range of outcomes. Fields could easily fail in a new situation. Caleb Williams could easily fail in Chicago. If both fail this next season, what happens? If Justin Fields fails in a new situation, he's probably not a starting quarterback in 2025. If Caleb Williams fails in Chicago, of course he's their starter in 2025. So even though we haven't seen a player on the football field, and technically that makes them an if, just because you've actually seen the other guy out there, it doesn't mean he's a solid thing. I know we are stumbling over our words here. I just don't necessarily know how we can say that the 101, aka Caleb Williams, a big if. Yeah, Justin Fields and Zay Flowers are for sure assets. I mean, the trade calculator agrees with me with the community values. I would way rather have the 101 and Javonte Williams over Justin Fields and Zay Flowers. And then this other deal, this is the perfect example of going through and putting up a bunch of quarters and trying to go trade it for $1. I mean, maybe in some other trade calculators, this would show that it's even. In the flogfantasy.com trade calculator, it's the 103, not even close. 103 versus the 112, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, if you can ever go out there and move up to get that elite level asset, the 103 in this instance is probably like Jaden Daniels, Drake May. Seems like maybe the other side's a lot because it's technically a first-round pick and a couple veterans that have been productive, but it's the 112, completely different caliber prospect, and who the hell knows what to expect from Pollard or Hopkins going forward. But I think that's all I have for y'all. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock, supporting the channel. I really hope that we're able to help you out in some way with this video. And if you are not already a member of the flock, it's not too late. You can find that link in the description, find in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK will get you 30% off any subscription. Yours truly will break down your Dynasty Fantasy Football team in a podcast. Plus, on flogfantasy.com, get all the Dynasty rankings of all your favorite creators. Get all the premium content. I mean, get our Dynasty trade calculator, get our Dynasty trade finder, the whole 9 yards. You can check it out over there in the description. But thank you again. Really do appreciate you and really hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.